Our next speaker is Francis Spivey Weber of Redondo Beach, who was elected Vice Chair of the State Water Resources Control Board on February 17, 2009. My biggest regret while serving on the State Board was that I was not there to vote for her to become Vice Chair. Before being appointed to the board, she served as the Executive Director of the Mono Lake Committee for more than a decade. She also previously served as the Director of International Programs for the National Audubon Society. She was a member of the Bay Delta Public Advisory Committee and co-chair of its Water Use Efficiency Committee. She also served as co-chair of the Southern California Water Dialogue and convener of the California Urban Water Conservation Council. She has served on many boards, including those of the Water Education Foundation, the California Council of Land Trusts, and Clean Water Action, and its nonprofit research arm, the Clean Water Fund. Please welcome her warmly.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to be here. It is a pleasure to be on this panel with all of these folks. And I think one correction that I would make to the challenge that Gary Wolf threw out as in terms of the future is it's not going to be a single agency or a single group or a single effort. It really is going to take all of us and all of you working together if we're going to solve the enormous interrelated problems that are associated with the Delta. The State Water Resources Control Board, on which I serve, and then the 9 regional boards that are part of the state and regional board, water boards system, is really the old timer in the room. We've been around for a long time, and as some have pointed out, we have done better or worse depending on what we had to do and how we did it, and the support that we had or who was there over time. We were formed in the late 1960s. So unlike the BDCP or the Delta Stewardship Council, we really have been in these Delta wars for a long time. The first Bay Delta plan that we developed back in the 70s was overturned in the courts. Almost everything we do gets litigated. So it was overturned in the courts. The second plan was actually upheld in the courts in 1978. So that was the first real Delta plan coming out of the State Water Board. The most recent revision of the Delta plan, and there's one in place right now, was done in 2006, but probably the most interesting Bay Delta plan is the one that got shelved in the early 1990s. This was a plan that was relatively simple in form. It largely said all urban areas should implement the best management practices of conservation statewide. That was the major action of that particular Delta plan. And talk about being ahead of your time. It threw, as you can imagine, urban areas, the governors, there were 2 and 2 different parties. It threw everyone into a tizzy. And we pulled it back largely because it wasn't just the water agencies and it wasn't just the governor. The environmental community, many parts of the environmental community came together and said, yes, we can do it better. We don't have to have a regulatory agency to tell us what to do. We can work this out in a much, much better way. And so the Bay Delta Accord was born from that aborted effort by the state board. And the Bay Delta Accord led to CalFed, and it led to a lot of funding, and it led to a lot of collaboration with federal agencies and state agencies and local agencies, and it created the integrated regional water management plans that many of you are working on today. And but we didn't really solve our problem. We did get the 2009 legislation. And that's very, very good. It put in the 20% reduction in urban conservation by 20% reduction in urban water use by 2020, and called on agriculture to do a much better job of conservation. So we have now, in 2009, we have a lot of the tools that we need to move forward. And I'm very happy to say that, thankfully, the Water Board is back, but not as the group that is going to make the Delta better through our regulations and our authorities, but as one of the players that's going to keep us moving forward, I hope, in a very positive direction that is going to take a tremendous amount of time, effort, and energy. If you listen to Phil, there was nothing that he said that isn't true. It's going to take time. It's going to take commitment. It's going to take looking in the mirror and making steps forward. Now, why is it so important to have the state and regional water boards engaged heavily in this effort with the voluntary efforts that are going on that are exemplary statewide? Well, one, we do have a huge number of authorities. It was mentioned that the California Constitution references the need to use water without wasting it or without using it unreasonably. We have the California Water Code that has established the water rights system as well as the water quality system in one body at the state, and then the water quality systems or regulatory systems at the regional level. We have our state Port Cologne Water Quality Act. We have the Federal Clean Water Act. And there are numerous judicial decisions that have been challenged in court and that we have won on. So the authority of the board is really quite strong. But authority isn't enough, as we've heard earlier today. We also have tools. And I think a lot of you do understand the tools of the Water Board, but probably most of you do not, because you don't, you deal with the Water Board when you've got a problem, but you don't necessarily take advantage of all the tools that are there. First of all, in Port Cologne and in the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act, we are responsible for planning, for basin planning, for watershed planning, and setting the objectives or the standards for what is considered water quality. That includes in-stream flows. That includes salinity. That includes a lot of the pollutants that you're familiar with, mercury and other things. But planning goals, planning objectives, planning standards are not self-implementing. We adopt those. They're very important. They tell us where we're heading. But in order to achieve those goals, we have to have permits. And it's in those permits that the actions that will need to be taken, at least the minimum actions that will need to be taken to achieve the objectives or the standards, is where that is the tool that is used, both on the water quality side and on the water rights side. Another tool that we're using now much more, and I understand we have an exhibit in the poster room, is data collection and monitoring. And we have several people here from who were with the state board and are now with the board, as well as with the regional boards, who can answer questions for you about the monitoring. But it's extremely important for local agencies and local communities to have access to the information that they need to know what they can do in their own home, in their own community, in their own agency to help move the process forward. We have a water quality database. You can find this is all public. You can find it on our website. We have a groundwater measuring database. It's called GeoTracker Gamma. And actually, even though the Department of Water Resources is developing their own database for measuring water levels, there is one that already exists. You can go online and see it. We have a reporting system now for electronic reporting system now for water rights. So we're starting to get a grip on how much water is actually being used, and that's only going to improve over time. I believe in the Bay Area, you're working closely with us to develop the California Environmental Data Exchange Network, CEDN, which is going to be more regional and broad in terms of providing portals to give you a good picture of what's going on. Here at the conference, the Monitoring Council and a monitoring site or a data site that we have called My Water Quality is also available. But my current new favorite is the performance reports. And this is, I think, going to become a fixture in the Water Board's approach to the future, both for the regional boards as well as for State Board. And these are pages, relatively simple, that actually help you figure out, are the things that we're doing as a community, as an agency, as individuals, are they actually working? Is water quality getting better? Are the pollutants going down? It's been very, very hard for you to really know that if you weren't engaged in some scientific effort in some university. We hope that, and we've started this, you can go online now and look under performance reports on the Water Board's website, which is www.waterboards.ca.gov, and you can see where we're heading with these performance reports. Again, with few resources, it's going to take a while to get everything together, but I can envision the performance reports on the Delta helping all of us do a much better job of tracking and adjusting as we need to over time. Another tool that we have is enforcement. Enforcement is extremely important for those of you who drive. You know that if you weren't just a little bit worried that you were going to get a ticket for going in the carpool lane, you would all get over into the carpool lane. Well, enforcement is something that we do, and it's very helpful. It's done at the regional board level, it's done at the state board level, and we now have from the legislation the Water Master. And finally, we have financing. Financing for projects and programs that are going to improve the water quality situation. And we get a big chunk of the financing comes from the Federal Environmental Protection Agency in the revolving loan funds. We get some, and the Department of Public Health gets some. We also, through enforcement, when we fine folks for having done something that wasn't quite right, we accumulate funds in the cleanup and abatement account, and those monies are also available to be used for major projects. So there are a lot of tools, a lot of authority. Now the question is, what are we doing with them? And to start off, the picture that the Water Board is facing is not exactly the same picture that Phil and the Stewardship Council are facing. It's not exactly the same one that the legislature told the BDCP to consider. We actually are looking at the entire Delta system. Now this is, in a map perspective, this is the San Joaquin, lower and upper. This is the Sacramento. This is the Delta. These are the tributary rivers that flow into these major systems. That is our purview. We can't do it all at once, so we're starting in segments, but it will all come together. We're doing some things sequentially and some things in parallel. Right now, we have a team of about 10 people who are working on setting flow standards and salinity standards in the lower San Joaquin. And we expect to be voting on those objectives or standards, but remember they're not self-implementing. So we're going to be voting on those in 2012. I hope the spring of 2012. We will be then moving that team over to work on the Delta and the SAC, and they will be developing the flow standards for that area. between 2012 and roughly 2014. In parallel, we are also forming a team to be looking at the tributary rivers and streams that come into the Delta to ensure that there are flow standards or objectives set up for those rivers as well. Think the American River or the Stanislaus. And that group was called for in legislation, in the 2009 legislation, and we're working with the Department of Fish and Game. We'll be working with many different stakeholder groups who have the kind of expertise for doing in-stream flow works, including the university systems, to develop in-stream flow objectives for the tributary streams to the Delta, and then eventually for streams all over the state of California. That's going to be ongoing, but that team is getting set up right now and should get started in early 2012. Finally, there is a team that is being formed to look at water rights options. And that particular group is not starting a water rights proceeding, but is looking at what kinds of things should go into a water rights proceeding, particularly, and we've established several things that we want to see come out of the water rights, the ultimate water rights proceeding that we will pursue probably in 2014 to 2016. And we want to have, one, strong guidance as to where we are heading and encourage local organizations, local watershed groups to work together to help us move a long way toward that goal. But there will be a clear deciding point when, if that can't be done collaboratively, locally, we will do it. And we'll be clear about that. It's kind of like the trigger that's in the budget right now, I think. But the other thing that we want to come out of this options paper is how can we change or adjust our plan in the future without having to have a 6-year water rights or water planning, Delta planning activity. How can we adjust adaptively in the future without having to open everything up? And so there'll be a group working on that. Then everything will come together, the flow studies that are the flow objectives that we've put together, the salinity objectives and other pollutant objectives that we've put together will come together for water rights permits and for water for water quality permits and for water rights decisions. And I pray that we will be finished somewhere between 2015 and 2016, not quite on the same schedule that Phil has laid out, but pretty close. And so this is one example of where, in keeping with the theme, doing more with less, Delta and Bay waters, we are, at the State Water Board, doing more with less. Thank you very much.